Growing up, my family always seemed to revolve around my brother, Mark. He was the golden child, athletic, popular, and effortlessly charming. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more reserved. While Mark basked in the glow of my parents' admiration, I stayed in the background, working part-time jobs through college to help support the household. My parents never hesitated to ask for help when bills were tight or when an emergency arose. One of the most glaring examples of this favoritism was Mark's wedding to his fiancée, Sarah. The wedding was an extravagant affair, overflowing with floral arrangements, and a live band flown in from out of state. My parents spent a fortune, desperate to maintain the image of a perfect, well-off family. Despite my reservations, I chipped in to cover the catering deposit, money I had saved to invest in my own future. They didn't thank me. Instead, Mom simply nodded and muttered, "That money helps." After the wedding, I felt exhausted, not just financially, but emotionally. I kept telling myself that helping was my duty as a son, but deep down, I knew that I was being taken for granted. My parents never asked Mark for anything. I was always the one picking up the slack, the one expected to be responsible. A few weeks after the wedding, I came across a dilapidated building on the edge of town while driving home from work. It had a "for sale" sign out front, looking like it hadn't been touched in years. Intrigued, I pulled over and saw the price, $2,900. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. I called the number on the sign, and after a brief conversation with the seller, I confirmed it was real. The building came as is, full of junk and in need of renovation. It didn't look like much, but I saw potential. A small, quirky antique shop had always been a dream of mine. I was tired of working a dull desk job, and this seemed like a chance to build something of my own. The money I had left after the wedding contribution was just enough to make the purchase. After some contemplation, I decided to take the risk and bought the place. I didn't tell my parents right away. I knew they wouldn't understand. Instead, I spent my evenings and weekends cleaning the place, slowly transforming it from a dusty, neglected storage space to something more inviting. I even started gathering items from estate sales and flea markets, building a small but interesting collection. Then came the family dinner. Mark and Sarah were there, bragging about their wedding gifts. Mom and Dad subtly hinted about the honeymoon plans, a luxurious, all-inclusive trip to Bora Bora. Their voices lowered as they discussed the cost, clearly hinting at me. I knew what was coming. Finally, Mom said it outright. "Since you were so helpful with the wedding, David, we thought you could just handle the honeymoon expenses too. It's only right. Mark deserves a proper trip after all this stress." My stomach dropped. They expected me to pay for the entire honeymoon. I took a deep breath and said, "I can't. I used my savings to buy an old store. I'm fixing it up to open a junk and antique shop." The room fell silent. Mom's face twisted with disbelief, while Dad's disappointment was palpable. "A junk store?" Mom snapped. "You wasted your money on trash?" "It's not trash," I replied firmly. "It's a chance to build something for myself." Mark sneered. "Typical David, always thinking small. You could have done something meaningful, but you chose garbage." Dad shook his head. "We were counting on you to help your brother. You know how important this trip is." I couldn't hold back anymore. Why is it always my responsibility to pay for Mark's life? I helped with the wedding because I wanted to support the family, but I can't keep sacrificing my own future for his. Mom's face hardened. "If that's how you feel, maybe you're not part of this family after all. You're just useless trash." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. Dad didn't even look at me. Mark just rolled his eyes, dismissing me like I was a nuisance. I stood up, my hands trembling. "Fine," I whispered. "If that's how you see me, I'm done trying to please you." I left the house feeling like my heart had been ripped out. As I drove back to my small apartment, I couldn't stop hearing Mom's words echoing in my mind. Useless trash. I wasn't their son anymore. It felt like my entire world had shattered. When I got home, I sat in the dark, trying to process the loss. It wasn't just their words, it was the years of being overlooked, underappreciated, and used. I had spent so long trying to earn their approval, only to be discarded the moment I made a choice for myself. But amidst the pain, a small spark of defiance flickered. I wasn't useless. I had taken a risk, and I was going to make it work. The junk store wasn't just a business, it was my chance to prove to myself that I could build something meaningful without their approval. The first few days after the fallout with my family were the hardest. I kept replaying that night over and over, the looks of disdain, the way Mom spat out those words. Useless trash. It wasn't just the insult. It was the final confirmation that I had never truly belonged in their world. I could have sunk into despair, but something inside me refused to let that happen. The junk store was mine, my one shot at building something from the ground up. I didn't know if I'd succeed, but I knew I couldn't let their cruel words be the last thing that defined me. The store itself was a disaster. The roof leaked, the windows were covered in grime, and every inch of space was cluttered with broken furniture, old electronics, and boxes of random junk. It smelled like mold and neglect. I stared at the chaos, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But giving up wasn't an option. I put on gloves, grabbed trash bags, and got to work. The first few days were grueling, hauling out broken chairs, sorting through rusted tools, and trying not to gag at the stale smell of old cardboard. At night, I crashed on the old cot in the back office, too exhausted to even think about going back to my apartment. I didn't have a plan, just a vision of what the place could become. Slowly, the piles of junk gave way to open space. I found some interesting items buried under the rubble. A vintage lamp that just needed a new bulb, a set of porcelain dishes wrapped in newspaper from the 1980s, and an old wooden rocking chair that creaked but held firm. One afternoon, while I was sanding down a scratch table, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "You're seriously doing this? A junk store? Mom says you're losing it. You could have helped the family, but instead you chose trash. Unbelievable." I stared at the screen, my grip tightening on the sandpaper. For a second, I felt the familiar pull to defend myself, to explain. But I stopped. I didn't owe him an explanation. I put the phone on silent and went back to work. That evening, I called my best friend, Ethan. I hadn't told him much since the fallout, but I needed someone who wouldn't judge me. "Man, I heard what happened," he said as soon as he picked up. "You good?" I hesitated. "I don't know. They disowned me. Called me trash because I bought this store instead of paying for Mark's honeymoon." Ethan snorted. "Of course they did. They always treated you like the family ATM, screw that. You finally did something for yourself, and they can't handle it." I sighed. I don't know if I made the right choice." "You did," he said firmly. "They've been using you for years. You're allowed to build something for yourself. Let them figure out their own mess." His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I'd spent so long sacrificing for their happiness that I didn't even know how to prioritize my own. It was time to change that. The next morning, I went back to the store with renewed determination. I pulled down the faded, "For sale," sign and replaced it with a hand-painted one that read, "Second Chances Antiques and Oddities." It felt symbolic. This store wasn't just a place to sell old stuff, it was my second chance, too. I started documenting the renovation process on social media, partly to keep myself accountable and partly because I needed something to stay motivated. I posted before and after pictures of the cleanup, little wins like finding an old jukebox that still worked after some tinkering, and videos of me restoring a cracked mirror. To my surprise, people started taking notice. A local blogger shared my post, calling it a journey of transformation. Comments poured in, encouragement from strangers who loved the idea of giving old things new life. Some even offered tips on restoration and sent links to tutorials. One afternoon, while I was cleaning up the storefront, a woman peeked through the glass door. "You open yet?" she called. "Not yet, but soon," I replied, wiping sweat from my forehead. She smiled. "It looks promising. My grandma used to run a little shop like this. I'll definitely come by when you're up and running." That small interaction gave me a jolt of motivation. Maybe I wasn't so crazy after all. As the days passed, the place started to come together. The floor was clear, shelves were up, and I'd arranged some of the restored pieces near the window. The sign out front looked less out of place, and the building itself seemed to breathe easier without the suffocating clutter. Ethan swung by one evening, bringing pizza and beer. "Dude, this place is looking awesome," he said, genuinely impressed. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "It's getting there. Still a lot to do, But I'm making progress. He raised his beer. To second chances. I clinked my bottle against his, feeling something I hadn't in a long time: hope. That night, as I lay on the old cot, I couldn't help but think about my family. Part of me still hurt from the way they dismissed me so easily, but another part was grateful. If they hadn't pushed me away, I might never have taken this leap. They saw me as trash, but I was determined to prove that I could turn something unwanted into something valuable, starting with myself. About a month into the renovation, the store finally started to look like something other than a forgotten warehouse. The faded wooden floors were polished, the windows cleaned, and the walls repainted in a warm, inviting shade of teal. I had rearranged the usable furniture into little themed corners: a reading nook with the restored rocking chair and a cozy vintage lamp, a kitchen set up with mismatched but charming porcelain dishes. One evening, as I was organizing some trinkets on a shelf, my phone pinged with a notification. Another comment on the store's social media page. "This place looks amazing! Can't wait to visit when it opens." I couldn't help but smile. The support from strangers had been surprising, but it kept me going. People seemed genuinely excited to see something old brought back to life. Ethan came by that evening, as he often did after work. "You're making waves, man," he said, scrolling through the comments on his phone. "People love this stuff. You even got a shout-out from that local craft community page." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He handed me his phone, showing a post where someone had written, "Second Chances Antiques and Oddities is shaping up to be the coolest spot in town. Love seeing someone give old things a new purpose." "That's actually really cool," I admitted, feeling a bit of pride. Ethan smirked. "Told you people would get it. You just had to believe in yourself." While we were moving some old crates to the back, Ethan suddenly looked thoughtful. "You know," he started, "it's kind of funny. Your parents saw this place as a dump. But look at it now. It's got personality. Just needed someone to see the potential." I paused, thinking about that. Maybe that's what I had been missing all along, someone who saw my potential, too. My parents had always looked at me like I was less than, just because I didn't follow Mark's path. But I was finally proving, to myself, if no one else, that I wasn't a failure. One afternoon, while I was outside cleaning up some leftover debris, a woman in her 60s approached. "You the owner?" she asked, her voice curious but kind. "Yes, ma'am," I replied. She looked at the new sign and nodded. "I used to shop here when it was Old Joe's place. Sad when it closed. Glad someone's giving it new life." "That's the plan," I said with a smile. She squinted at the window display. "That rocking chair, that used to be Joe's wife's favorite. She'd sit out here and knit on slow days." My heart softened. "I'll make sure it's well loved again." She smiled, patting my arm. "Good luck, son. I'll be back when you open." When I shared the story with Ethan later, he grinned. "See? Even the locals are rooting for you. You're turning this place into something special." His words gave me a sense of validation I hadn't felt in a long time. That evening, I got a text from Mark. "Saw your store on Facebook. Mom's still pissed. Says you're embarrassing the family. Maybe it's time to let it go." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I blocked his number. I wasn't going to let him drag me down anymore. The next few weeks were hectic but productive. I focused on sourcing unique items, hand-carved wooden trinkets, vintage signs, and some old radios that I managed to get working again. I set a date for the grand opening, planning a little event with snacks and drinks. The night before, I was too nervous to sleep. What if no one showed up? What if people laughed at the store? Ethan texted me. "You got this. Proud of you." A simple message, but it meant everything. The next morning, I arrived early, setting up the last displays and making sure the place looked inviting. My heart pounded as the clock ticked toward opening time. Slowly, people started trickling in, some curious neighbors, a few folks from the craft community, and even the lady from before who had known Joe. "This place is lovely," she said, buying a small, hand-painted vase. One young couple marveled at the old jukebox, laughing as it sputtered to life with a crackly Elvis song. The best surprise came about an hour in. A local reporter from the community paper walked in, camera in hand. "Mind if I take some photos? Your store's been getting a lot of buzz," she said. My cheeks burned, but I nodded. Sure, go ahead. She snapped a few shots and interviewed me about why I'd opened the place. I explained how I wanted to give forgotten things a second chance. How just because something looked worn didn't mean it wasn't valuable. After she left, Ethan came up to me, clearly proud. You did it, man. You really did it. I couldn't help but smile, looking around at the people browsing and chatting. The store felt alive, vibrant in a way I hadn't imagined. As the day wound down, I realized that for the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy. I had taken a risk, put in the effort, and created something worthwhile, something that was mine. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I just needed to believe in myself. That night, as I locked up, I took one last look at the shop, feeling a deep sense of pride. My parents might still think I was a failure, but that didn't matter anymore. I had found my own path, and I wasn't looking back. The days following the grand opening felt surreal. People kept coming in, some curious about the quirky name, others drawn by the rustic charm of the place. I had no idea how word spread so fast, but it seemed like the little store was becoming a bit of a local favorite. One afternoon, I was restocking some old vinyl records when a young woman approached me. Are you the owner? She asked, smiling. Yes, that's me, I replied. She beamed. I just wanted to say that your store is amazing. My grandmother used to collect porcelain dolls, and seeing your display brought back so many memories. I bought one last week and showed it to her. She was over the moon. That's really nice to hear, I said, genuinely touched. Keep doing what you're doing. This place feels like a little time capsule, she added before heading out. Ethan dropped by later, holding a coffee in each hand. Man, I'm telling you, the buzz around town is crazy. People love this place, he said, handing me a cup. I still can't believe it's actually working, I admitted, leaning against the counter. He grinned. You took a gamble, and it paid off. You deserve every bit of this. We spent the afternoon rearranging the front display, putting the jukebox in the spotlight. A few customers came in just to hear it play, fascinated by the old-school charm. One older man even joked that it took him back to his first date in the 60s. Just as I was about to close up, my phone buzzed. A message from Chloe, my cousin who had always been more like a sister. Hey, heard about the store? Mom and Dad are pissed you're getting attention. They think it's just a phase. Mark's being a jerk as usual. Ignore them. Proud of you. I couldn't help but shake my head. Of course, they would still see this as a mistake, I replied. Thanks, Chloe. I'm doing my own thing now. They can think what they want. Her response came quick. That's the spirit. You're doing awesome. I'll visit soon. That night, as I was cleaning up, I thought about how much had changed. A few months ago, I was stuck in a job I hated, always bending to my family's expectations. Now I was running my own business, a small, imperfect, but undeniably mine store. The thought made me feel more grounded than I had in years. The next morning, I was greeted by a surprise. A local news station had picked up the community blogs feature on the store. They wanted to do a segment on small businesses breathing new life into old spaces. I almost dropped my coffee when I got the call. Yes, absolutely. I'd love to do that, I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. They scheduled the shoot for the following week. As soon as I hung up, I called Ethan, barely containing my excitement. You're gonna be on TV? He laughed. That's insane. I know. I didn't expect this kind of attention, I admitted. He smirked. That's what happens when you turn junk into a gem. The day of the shoot arrived, and I was a ball of nerves. The reporter, a young woman named Kelly, made it easy, though. She loved the concept of the store and asked thoughtful questions about why I chose to open it. It's about giving old things a new life, I explained. Just because something looks worn doesn't mean it's worthless. Sometimes it just needs a little care. Afterward, she filmed shots of the store, highlighting the quirky decorations and restored items. As they packed up, Kelly turned to me with a smile. This place has heart, she said. You don't see that often. Good luck. I watched them drive away, still processing what just happened. My little store was going to be on TV. The next day, while arranging some new finds, a set of vintage typewriters, a familiar face walked in. It was Mark. Seriously? He scoffed, looking around. This dump is getting TV coverage? I took a deep breath, refusing to let him get under my skin. Yes, actually. People seem to like it. He shook his head, smirking. You always go for the weird stuff. Mom says you're just desperate for attention. I'm just running a business, I replied calmly. He walked around, touching items like they were contaminated. You really think this place will last? Just because a few people are curious now doesn't mean they'll keep coming back. That's my problem to figure out. Not yours. Mark rolled his eyes. Whatever. Just don't expect anyone to bail you out when it fails. Without another word, he left. I stared at the door, trying to shake off the frustration. Why couldn't he just leave me be? Ethan showed up a bit later, sensing my bad mood. What's up? He asked. Mark stopped by. Just to be a jerk, as usual. Ethan shrugged. Ignore him. Your success makes him insecure. You're doing something real, and he hates it because he never takes risks himself. I knew he was right. Mark had always taken the easy path, never straying from what our parents planned for him. Maybe seeing me build something on my own made him feel small. When the news segment aired that evening, I was too anxious to watch it live. Ethan called as soon as it was over. Dude, you nailed it. You sounded like a pro. Relieved, I pulled up the video on the station's website. They had edited it beautifully, showing the before and after transformation and featuring interviews with customers who praised the store's charm. By the next morning, my social media pages were flooded with messages, people wanting to know when they could visit, offering to donate old items, and just congratulating me on the progress. I leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed in the best possible way. Mark's words still stung, but they were fading into the background, drowned out by the support from strangers who appreciated what I was doing. I had turned my rejection into something positive, and no one could take that from me. The news segment turned out to be a game changer. Over the next week, the store was busier than ever. People from neighboring towns even stopped by to see what the buzz was about. I didn't expect the old jukebox and restored furniture to attract so much attention, but it seemed like the town was embracing the idea of second chances, just like I had. One morning, I was going through inventory when a couple walked in, holding hands. Are you the owner? The woman asked. Yes, that's me, I replied. She smiled warmly. We saw your story on the news. Loved the idea of bringing old things back to life. We're opening a little coffee shop and thought some of your pieces would add character. We spent the next hour discussing their vision. They picked out a few mismatched chairs, a vintage coffee table, and a quirky metal sign that read, Coffee, because adulting is hard. I offered them a discount since they were buying in bulk, and they left with plans to come back for more. Ethan showed up later, grinning from ear to ear. I just saw your post about the coffee shop deal. Dude, you're killing it. I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. It feels good to see things coming together. I didn't expect this much support. He shrugged. People love a good comeback story. Plus, you're actually putting effort into making the place special. That counts. The door chime rang, and to my surprise, Chloe walked in. Hey, stranger, she greeted, looking around with wide eyes. Wow, this place is amazing. Way cooler than I imagined. I laughed. Thanks. I've been working nonstop to keep it looking decent. She gave me a quick hug. I'm so proud of you. You really made this happen. Mom and Dad are still pretending it's not a big deal, but I can tell they're secretly checking out your posts. They just won't admit it. I sighed. Figures. I'm not holding my breath for them to come around. Chloe shrugged. Honestly, who cares? You're thriving without their approval. That's what matters. Later that day, a middle-aged man came in, looking around with a curious expression. You're the guy from the news? He asked. That's me, I said, bracing for whatever was coming. He chuckled. You know, I drove past this place for years thinking it was just a dump. Seeing what you've done with it, well, it's impressive. I came to check it out myself. We chatted for a while, and he ended up buying an old rotary phone I had refurbished. As he left, I felt a new sense of validation. People didn't just see the store as a curiosity, they genuinely appreciated it. That evening, as Ethan and I were closing up, my phone buzzed. Another text from Mark. Seriously? Now you're getting business from that news piece? Must be a slow news week. This won't last, David. You're just lucky right now. I showed Ethan, who just rolled his eyes. He can't handle it, Ethan said simply. Yeah, I agreed. It's sad, really. I used to care so much about what he thought. Now it just seems petty. Ethan clapped me on the back. That's because you've grown. He hasn't. You're building something real, and he's stuck in his own bubble. A few days later, the coffee shop owners returned, ecstatic about how the furniture looked in their space. They posted photos online, tagging the store and giving me credit for the unique setup. Their post went semi-viral locally, and more people came in, curious about what else they could find. One day, as I was helping an elderly couple choose a refurbished cabinet, I saw someone loitering outside. It was Mark. He looked hesitant, almost out of place. I could see him peeking through the window, probably trying to gauge how the store was doing. I took a deep breath and went outside. Hey, Mark, I said calmly. He glanced at me, his usual smirk absent. This place is busy, he mumbled. Yeah. People seem to like it, I replied. He hesitated. Mom keeps saying it's just a phase. Dad thinks you're wasting your time. But it doesn't look like a failure. His words caught me off guard. For the first time, he wasn't mocking me, just stating what he saw. It's not a phase, I said firmly. I'm working hard to make this work. Just because it's different from what you do doesn't mean it's wrong. He looked at the sign, then back at me. Maybe. I don't get it. But people seem to care about this place. That's the point, I said. Not everything has to fit into the same mold. I found something I'm good at, and I'm not going to let anyone take that from me. Mark didn't argue. He just gave a small, almost reluctant nod before walking away. When I went back inside, Ethan raised an eyebrow. Everything cool? He asked. Yeah, I replied, still processing the encounter. I think he's starting to realize I'm not failing. Ethan grinned. Took him long enough. That night, as I was counting the day's earnings, I thought about how much things had changed. The store wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I didn't need Mark's validation anymore, and I didn't care if my parents couldn't see my success. What mattered was that I had built something with my own hands, something real and meaningful. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living on my own terms. And it was more fulfilling than I ever imagined. A few months after the store's opening, business was better than I ever expected. The local news segment had given me a boost, and word of mouth kept new customers coming through the door. I even had a few regulars, collectors looking for unique finds, young couples furnishing their first apartments, and elderly folks who loved seeing familiar, nostalgic items. Ethan came by almost daily, always hyped about the store's progress. Did you see the comments on your latest post? He asked one evening, waving his phone. No, what's up? He grinned. Someone said your store has more personality than the chain shops downtown. People are digging it. I couldn't help but laugh. That's the goal, making it feel like more than just a place to buy stuff. Ethan nodded. You're doing that, man. People come here for the vibe as much as the items. You turned it into a community spot. One afternoon, Chloe popped in, holding a box of homemade cookies. Brought these for you and Ethan. You two practically live here, she joked. I smiled, grateful for her presence. Thanks. You're pretty much family at this point. She gave me a side hug. You know, Mom's still trying to act like your success doesn't matter, but I caught her watching the news segment online. Twice. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Chloe nodded. And Dad asked me about the store the other day. I think they're finally realizing they might have been wrong about you. I shrugged, trying not to let hope creep in too much. If they come around, they come around. I'm done chasing their approval. She smiled knowingly. You should be proud. You built this place from nothing. They'll have to see that eventually. A few days later, I was setting up a new display of restored radios when Mark showed up again. He walked in cautiously, as if unsure of his welcome. Hey, he mumbled. I glanced up. Hey. He looked around, taking in the bustling shop. A group of teens was checking out some vintage cameras while an older man chatted with Ethan about restoring an old clock. This place is busy, Mark said, almost grudgingly. Yeah, it's been picking up, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He shuffled his feet, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. I didn't think it would last, he admitted. Figured it was just a fluke. I put down the radio I was cleaning. Why does that surprise you? He didn't meet my eyes. You always did weird stuff, never did what was expected. I guess I just thought you'd fail because, well, you didn't do things the way Mom and Dad wanted. I let out a slow breath. Doing things their way never worked for me. I had to find my own path. Mark finally looked at me, his expression softer than usual. Maybe I just didn't get it. You're doing your own thing. It seemed like you were just being stubborn. But this place is actually pretty cool. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was close. I gave him a nod. Thanks. The next day, I got a message from Dad. Hey, can we talk? Your mom and I would like to visit the store sometime. Let us know when. I stared at the text for a long moment, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to say no, that they didn't deserve to see what I had built after disowning me. But another part of me was curious. Did they really want to see me, or just the result of my hard work? I texted back. Sure. Stop by this weekend. When they arrived, they seemed hesitant, like they didn't quite know how to approach me. Mom looked around, her eyes lingering on the refurbished furniture and the colorful displays. Dad cleared his throat. You did all this yourself? Yeah. Took a lot of time, but it's coming together. Mom glanced at the sign by the counter, a framed quote that read, Not everything broken is worthless. She pursed her lips, looking uncomfortable. It's nicer than I expected, she finally said. I shrugged. I wanted to make it my own. Dad looked at me with a mix of pride and regret. You did good, David. I guess we didn't give you enough credit. I didn't reply immediately, not wanting to give too much away. Mom spoke up, her voice quieter than usual. We thought you were just throwing money away. But it's clear you put thought into this. I didn't realize how serious you were. I always was, I replied, my tone firm but calm. They didn't stay long, just browsed a bit and then left. But before they walked out, Dad gave me a pat on the shoulder. Proud of you, he said, almost too low to hear. After they left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and resentment. It was something, an acknowledgement. Maybe they wouldn't ever fully understand my choices, but they saw that I had made something real. That evening, as Ethan and I closed up, I told him about the visit. He grinned. Dude, they actually came? That's huge. I nodded slowly. I didn't think it would happen. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Progress, Ethan said, giving me a nudge. I leaned back against the counter, realizing that I didn't feel the usual pang of longing for their approval. I had built this place on my own, with my own vision and effort. Whether they saw it or not didn't matter as much as it used to. As I looked around the shop, filled with customers browsing and chatting, I felt a sense of calm settle in. I wasn't just proving something to my family anymore. I was building a life that made me happy. That, more than anything, was the real victory.